Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of Board Games I Got Rid Of and Why. So this is an ongoing series that I do where I talk about all the games that I've left my collection and I give some rationale and explanation as to why I came to that decision, because sometimes it's not as nefarious as it sounds. So we've got another 10 games here, some pretty big iconic titles as well, so let's get started. So the first game that I want to talk about is Vasco da Gama. So this one is actually probably one of the best games that I've ever culled from my collection. There's a lot of good things going on in this game. It's a watch your game title, a Paolo Mori design, so a lot of credibility. And to be honest, the gameplay is rock solid. I've got nothing really bad to say about the actual gameplay. The design itself has some ultra interesting mechanisms, particularly in terms of the initiative and the almost programming aspect of this game, where you would actually draft all these different tokens with these initiative values on them and allocate them to the different action spots as the game goes on, and they'll resolve in the order in which they were drafted, like from the lowest number to the highest number. But the lower numbers, which will of course be resolved first, may end up costing you more than you originally anticipated, because it's got this kind of random generator that moves up or down that can kind of relieve you of some cost or even cost you more. So you've got to be a bit, you take a bit of a gamble at times and be prepared to get stung. I absolutely love that mechanism. Now, to be honest, that was the kind of unique selling point of this game. The rest of it was a pretty generic Euro, collecting meeples, collecting resources, building ships, and gaining points in different ways. But at least this game did have something different in that programming mechanism that I, to be honest, completely adored. I thought that was a great mechanism. I did end up keeping this one in my collection for quite some time, but I found that it was just sitting there on my shelf, never getting played, and there was always like a queue building up in front of this one. And I just knew that, even if I hadn't got rid of this one, it would still be sat here on my shelf. But again, this is one of the only games where I've kind of seen second-hand copies pop up on the market and thinking, shall I get that one back? Because it's pretty affordable, and it is still way better than a lot of the games out there on the market. So still highly recommend this one. But unfortunately, I can't keep every single game, and this is just an example of that. So that is Vasco da Gama. Next up, I have another game that I actually have advocated quite a lot over the years. This is Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. So another kind of example, a bit like Vasco da Gama. I really don't have that much negative to say about this game at all. I think it's a great game as you're building up these caravans of cards, building up like an engine basically, as you can only ever resolve the first card or the nearest card in each of these caravans. But when you use it, they go to the back of that caravan. So you've got to kind of time things where if you use this card, you've got to be ready for this card to be used and so on to get the most efficient engine going. Very clever mechanism that I've never ever seen used before. So it's, again, another game that has something unique going for it. But why did it leave the collection? I played this game a ton over the years and pretty much exhausted everything it had to offer. Now, if there was ever a game that needed an expansion on new material, then Kashgar might be top of that list for me. So, all it needed was an injection of new cards, some new little mechanisms, some new different ways to score, and this would still no doubt be in my collection. But unfortunately, that incentive just diminished, and again, I've seen everything that it has to offer and played the hell out of it. And sometimes, I happily come to an end with a game and I'm ready to move it on and move on to the next thing. But still, nothing negative to say about the game. I think it's great. That is Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. The next game I want to talk about is Arcana, which is probably quite a controversial pick because I know a lot of you out there love this game. And to be honest, I think the game is rock solid, a very elegant and streamlined design, and probably one of the strongest examples of a game doing so much with so little. So this is kind of like a resource conversion engine tableau builder style game, as you are playing up these cards which will convert kind of resources into other resources, all with the aim of racing to get to a certain amount of points. Now, I do like the way that you can completely just transform goods into other resources and amplify things, get stronger and stronger as the game goes on. But to be honest, the only reason this one left my collection, and this one might be a completely isolated incident, is that I had a game with this one that completely fell flat. The cards didn't quite gel as well as I would have hoped. That wasn't just for me, that was for the other players as well. And everyone just kind of felt a bit trapped in not being able to do much with the cards they had. Now, I know that a lot of people would argue against that being the case with this game, but that's just what I personally took away from it. And I felt it was a bit frustrating. And to be honest, I kind of tailor my collection to being towards games where I have a lot of trust in, or at least 100% trust in, where if I know I'm going to pull this off the table, I know you're at least going to get something out of it. It's going to be guaranteed fun, basically, at least for me. Whereas this one, that little bit of a gamble of that happening again, really did leave a bit of a sour taste in my mouth and just made me think, you know what, let's get rid of this one. I like the game, but I didn't really love the game. I thought it was solid, but that was just enough, that incident was just enough to tip it over the edge for me and make me, again, make that decision to get it out of the collection. But again, it might be a completely personal experience, because I know this game is massively popular and a lot of really experienced and seasoned gamers whose opinion I trust a lot do think a lot of this game, and I'm sure I am the anomaly here. So that is Res Arcana. The next game I want to talk about is Taj Mahal by Reiner Knizia. Now, I'll be completely honest, I'm a massive Reiner Knizia fanboy, and I was very excited to play this one because I've heard a lot of good things about this one over the years, and naturally, when you play games that you're anticipating, you are excited to do so. This one has some pretty cool mechanisms in it, particularly the way that you play cards or manage your hand of cards, where essentially, turn after turn, you are bidding with these cards, trying to compete in I think it's 4 or 5 different categories. But if at any time you have the most of a certain type of category on display, then you can withdraw from the round basically and take the reward corresponding to that. Now, what that means is that you don't even necessarily have to bid the most by the end of the round. Just if at that one snapshot in time you have the most, then you will win, which I do quite like a lot. And it adds some pretty interesting decisions and makes you divert away from what the other players are doing. And it also adds this cool decision of wanting to get out the round early, because it means you get more cards into your hand for the next round. So honestly, I thought the hand management in this game is very good, and you do have to pace yourself quite carefully. The route building part of this game I thought was average at best, just getting points here and there as you kind of connect your buildings together. There were some mitigation tools that you can get around things by duplicating spots that other people have already been to. But ultimately, I thought my expectations for this game were a lot higher than what the game actually reached. So I did feel a little bit, not deflated, but not even underwhelmed, that it just didn't quite reach the peaks that I would have liked it to and hoped it would have. But a solid game, we all enjoyed the game, but ultimately I didn't really say, I need this in my collection to play it again and again. It was just a good design that wasn't anything special in my opinion. So that is Taj Mahal. Next up, I have Juicy Fruits. Now, this game actually featured recently on my top 10 games that should have been mega hits. And I still completely stand by that statement, despite me culling this one from my collection personally. The game is quite unique in the way it plays, as you have this personal player board with all these different fruits on them, and you're sliding these fruits around, almost like a sliding puzzle. And the more spaces you move means you get more of that resource. And as you're doing it, you're clearing things out on your board as well to create more kind of opportunity to get more resources with a single movement. And then you're trading them in to get contracts and things, just to get victory points. So a very fast, snappy game that's got a really low barrier to entry, and a lot of people could enjoy and have a lot of fun with. The game was a little bit light for my personal tastes. Now, despite me appreciating the design, there's a lot of games out there that I think that fill that bracket. I think of games like Wingspan, I can completely see why they were mega hits. I can completely understand why so many people enjoy them, but it's not quite tailored to my personal taste, what I'd want in my own collection. But I can still completely recommend this game to so many different players, especially if you do play with lighter, people who enjoy lighter games, maybe family weight style games. Then this one is right at the top of the pack for me. And I completely reiterate that this game should have been a bigger hit than it was. Lovely production, very fast, and again, just different. So that is Juicy Fruits. Next up, I have Master Word, which is a party game that kind of flew under the radar from a couple of years ago. This is a twist on the Mastermind system. However, you are doing this with word association. So basically, cooperatively, you are working together to try and work out what the master word is. So maybe a category would be something like animal, and then everybody is writing a word associated to animal, and then the clue giver is going to show how many of those clues are correct and how many are incorrect. And you're trying to deduce, as a team, what clues are viable, what ones aren't viable, trying to filter out the bad clues and to get to the key word. So a very familiar design, but one that works really well. I just thought that this game didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. To be honest, when I'm playing it, I'm really enjoying it. But when it's sat on my shelf, I don't really have the incentive to pull it out, and I seem to lean towards other more familiar party games that are a bit less thinky, and just a bit breezier, and you can sit back and relax. Whereas this one you need to concentrate a bit more because there's quite a lot of pressure to get things right and to actually do well in the game. But I still think this is a very well-rounded party game, a lot of fun, and pretty clever in the way it plays. And it's kind of a spin on those old classic games that have been tried and tested to be good designs. But ultimately, there's just so many other great party games out there that this one didn't quite, never really got pulled off the shelf. So that is why Masterword left my collection. The next game that left my collection is Whistle Mountain, which is actually a very interesting design. A worker placement game where you're actually building the board and the worker placement spots as you go, as one of the actions is to construct this kind of scaffolding, and then another action is to actually put the worker placement spots on them to get resources, to convert resources into other resources. However, the way you collect these resources, or the actual worker placement spots, is so cool, as you have these airships of different sizes, and you can squeeze them onto different spots on the grid, and depending on where you're touching means the worker placement spots you can activate. Ultra cool design. And you know what, there's not much I don't like about this game. The only issue that I had with it was that I thought the game was far too forgiving and far too generous in terms of getting resources. So I always found myself never struggling to get anything. I was just completely showered in resources, just had the opportunity to buy whatever I wanted, constant engine building benefits that I could just afford at any time. And I would have liked it to be a bit more restrictive, to be a bit tighter, and a bit harder to get what you wanted done, achieved. So normally when games are a bit too generous, it kind of makes me lose interest quickly because I don't really feel like I can better on my previous games. And sadly, that's the lasting impression I had of Whistle Mountain. Despite it being a really cool game, just a few tweaks would have taken this to the next bracket. But I can still completely, I recommend you at least check this one out because it is worth your time and it is a solid design. So that is Whistle Mountain. The next game that left my collection is The Bloody Inn, which is a pretty cool game actually, one with some pretty interesting hand management mechanisms and a very cool theme, as you are basically this hotel owner, and every night a bunch of guests are going to come into your hotel, and the idea is you're trying to murder these occupants, steal the money from their pockets, and then bury the bodies. However, every now and then these police officers will come and attend the hotel, and if you've got any bodies lying around when the police officers attend, then you're going to get hit pretty hard. So a really cool concept, one that's pretty grim, but I find it a lot of fun and quite interesting. And it has some pretty cool systems, as you could recruit these different people into your hand, which will give you strengths in different areas. Maybe they'll make it easier for you to kill people. Maybe they'll make it easier for you to bury the bodies. You could even just use these people as buildings in the first place to give you a location to bury the bodies. And if you kind of have such a congested hand by keep collecting cards, then at the end of every round, you have to pay an amount of money, which is your victory points, in order to keep them under your employment. So there's a lot of things to spin here. So it's a very tight little hand management game where the smallest of mistake could hit you quite hard. The reason this one left the collection, despite me enjoying how different it was that I thought some of the mechanisms were quite obtuse. And to be honest, despite me liking the way the game worked, I didn't get a tremendous amount of fun from it. I kind of one of those games where I appreciate but don't enjoy as much as I would have hoped. And on top of that, if I was ever to introduce this to other people, it never seemed to land as well as I would have hoped. It seemed to confuse them quite a lot, so it meant that I'd only ever play it with my brother, who we both understood the game, and we tend to enjoy other two-player games more, or would rather play a game designed for two players rather than The Bloody Inn. But another game that I know a lot of people like the solo mode of this one, and if you want a different concept and a different theme with great artwork, then give this one a look, because it is a good game, but one that wasn't quite right for me personally. The second last game I want to talk about is A Fake Artist Goes to New York. So this is a party game by Oink Games, as you are working together to draw a picture. Everybody's going to know what picture you're drawing apart from one person. So they're going to have to kind of wing it and hope that they can cotton on to see what people are trying to make and what picture they're trying to draw. So on each player's turn, you're just drawing a line or two and trying to kind of enforce confidence in your teammates that you are not the fake artists. It's Got some really cool moments in this game as some people expose themselves. You know, you're clearly drawing a fish or something, and all of a sudden it'll get to the fake artist, and then they draw some legs on this animal, and then I was like, oh, well, obviously they're the fake artist, and a lot of fun to be had, some good laugh out loud moments. That being said, I do think this is kind of a one-trick pony, and once you've played it a few times and had those good laughs, then I don't think it has that much staying power to play it many more times. And to be honest, you do not actually need the game itself to enjoy this concept. You can just get some pen and paper and play it that way. So again, it's a bit of a waste of money to buy the actual game itself because you're just getting a bunch of paper sheets and some pens. So I would just encourage you to just learn the rules and play it yourself if you were interested in the design. But it's a good party game, just not one of the great ones, and I'd always lean towards playing something like Telestrations over A Fake Artist Goes to New York. And when something's been directly replaced with another game, I don't really see the need to keep them both. Hence why A Fake Artist Goes to New York is out of the collection. And the final game I want to talk about on this episode is Race for the Galaxy. So another game that I know is going to be somewhat polarising because a lot of people love this one. Considered one of the best little tableau builders, one of the best hand management and engine building style games. It's actually another Tom Lehman design who I've already spoken about, who designed Res Arcana. And staying true to his style of games, this is another one that does so much with so little. As you are trying to play all these cards in which synergize with each other and give you points different ways. But this one uses that Puerto Rico action selection system as you're playing a role, and whatever role you play, you get the stronger version of it, but everybody else gets a kind of a weaker version of it. So sometimes you want to play things that you differently than what your opponents are doing because you have some trust that your opponent is going to play a certain card and you can piggyback off that. And it's all about being as efficient as you can with utilising and abusing that system. But one of the running themes on criticisms of this game is that it is quite difficult to teach. It is quite fiddly and confusing in terms of its iconography. And to be honest, I do think that is true. I do think it is quite esoteric and hard to drill into your head. At least I found it that way. I'm sure the more you play it, the more it becomes easier, which obviously is the case. And we play the game so sporadically, a lot of the games in our collection, we don't play back to back, we don't play them through big, numerous times in a row. It felt like every time we were going back to this game, we were learning it again from scratch. Whereas I think Race for the Galaxy is the kind of game that you want to be playing again and again and again, because you do start to polish up your skills, and it's one of those games that rewards repeated plays, because there is a lot to explore here. There's a lot of sophistication to the game design, and to be honest, that style of game doesn't suit me personally, because I like variety, I like diving in and dipping in and out of all the different game types, rather than kind of exploring the same game again and again. So it wasn't quite a right game for my collection personally. But I don't discredit the game at all. I think it's a wonderful design that's clearly stood the test of time. A lot of people enjoy this one, and to be honest, I did enjoy it, and I would happily play this one anytime, but one that's not right for my collection, as I said. So that is Race for the Galaxy. So there we go, there's another 10 board games that have left my collection. Hopefully this video has given a little bit of an explanation and rationale as to why I came to the decision of getting rid of these games, because I know a lot of these are very popular and very highly rated. And a lot of people are going to want my head on a spike for saying these things. But hey, everyone's got their own tastes. Everyone wants their own kind of collection. And these just weren't quite right for me, despite a lot of them being fantastic game designs. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. And check out my other videos too. In particular, if you want to see all the other games that have left my collection, I've got another 17 videos before this one. So that's 170 games that I've explained why I left my collection, and be sure to check those out, because something might be useful to you there. There might be a little nugget of information that could help you decide if this game is right for you or not. But for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye now.